Hello and welcome to Access Astrology. We are three astrologers who are fascinated by how astrology unfolds in our daily lives, in the politics around us, in actual events, and in our spiritual lives. I expect to be joined by Mark Woltz and Anne Ortley, though Mercury is about to turn direct retrograde at the end of this week, next Thursday. And so we are already feeling we're stepping into the shadow of Mercury retrograde. Mercury is going over the patch that it will retrograde back over. Things begin to slow down. You will hear me, a very mercurial person, mix up my words. So it's an interesting part of the process. We hope that uh, they will join us. It's been a really interesting time. I'm going to put up first the chart of the flood. Now, we don't have, this is on July 4th, the flood that hit Texas, because I think it's an interesting model for how it's going to affect all of us. And I see Anne coming on in. Hello, Anne.
Hi, Heather. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. We've got a couple of charts to look at tonight. And first, how are you? And where are you zooming in from? This is our
I
Anne
am
Orton.
excellent, actually. I'm coming in from New York, my bright red desk here in New York. I'm excellent. I had my year and a half checkup for cancer. And actually, I had it on June 10th. You know, it's the full moon is tomorrow. And I had June 10th or January 10th of 24, right? But anyway, that was the new moon that we have tomorrow at 18 Virgo, 18 Cap. And I went and had all my little scans and I got the radiology report and I'm good to go, including my COVID lung cleaned up. I had some bottom stuff in my lungs from the COVID that is gone now. That was there a year. That was there in March. I had the first scan for the surgery in November. And so it matched the surgery. Everything's good. And the COVID lung is gone. So I'm completely thumbs clean, no cancer. Yay. So
fabulous. And hello, Mark. Welcome.
Hi, Mark. He's up with mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Where are you zooming in from?
Zooming in from Vermont. We went over to
Wonderful.
New Hampshire today and ended up getting a little lost, but we made it back. I just got here.
Wonderful.
Very cool.
And I'm seeing a lot of people as Uranus has just gone into Gemini, Jupiter in Cancer. Now all the 5 planets, they're going to retrograde back in the fall. But we have this feeling of a new agenda. And so I'm hearing people's old health issues clearing up, and I'm hearing new health issues coming in, that there's a real shift in the paradigm. We're going to be seeing that more in politics, hopefully, in the months ahead. But it's an interesting, the agendas are shifting.
The agendas are shifting. I think that's a lovely way to say it, the agendas, because it's not, that's how you can change things. Like you have to look at, you have the status quo, and then you go, is that my agenda? And there's a lot of aspects to Pallas Athena, plus Mercury's in his retrograde shadow. So he wants us to reconsider, and it's in Leo, reconsider what our heart path is. You know, what do we have to do to make our heart happy?
Right. And what is our story? Mercury in Leo wants to know what is our story. And whether we're telling the truth or not, we need to hear what the story is. And I was watching the flood pattern on July 4th. It was really interesting. Anne just disappeared, but we expect her back in a minute. On the July 4th, the flood was raining all night long. The communication problem was there. And then it began to switch right about 4:30. Between 4:30 and 6:30 is when that deluge just washed through, the many feet of process. Here she is back on stage. She fell off the stage. She's back on the stage.
I was trying to make it bigger and I clicked something and it all went away. I'm like, just read it the size it is. Put on your glass.
Sorry, it's
I see reflection and I'm like, if I can make it a little bigger. But
I know. I wish they could.
not during the middle of the show when I can click off and lose it. Sorry about that, Heather.
No problem. We
You were
knew
looking
you'd
at
come
the
back.
floods. You were
We're
looking
looking at the flood. So this is at 4:30 is when it started to swell. By 4:35, the water is really rising. By 6:30, it had all gone through. What I saw, I mean, how literal. Often that the Neptune Saturn conjunction, when the Exxon Valdez hit a rock and broke open, that was such a Saturn Neptune aspect. The falling of the Berlin Wall. Here was water that became Aries. It was angry water. Saturn and Neptune was exactly stationary. It had gone stationary a few hours earlier, and it was holding still. So the storms sat right on that area and swirled and swirled and swirled and dumped. Saturn, there was a lot of there were cars and trees and rocks rolling down that water, and it wasn't just the water that was breaking through, but it was really breaking up, dissolving structures as it went through with that Saturn. And during the time that it began, that Saturn-Neptune conjunction moved up to the midheaven. The moon started off at the very last second of Scorpio and went into Scorpio and squared Pluto and Mercury during, when the real crap was happening. There's a lot happening here with that, the yod to that moon in Scorpio that was taking the heat. And, it was a painful process to watch. Were you watching that story? And, Mercury and Leo, the stories that are coming out are outrageous and huge. And some of them are truly terrible and some of them were total lies. So it's important.
Total lies. Oh, okay. I hadn't been following that part.
There's Marjorie Taylor Greene was putting out that that they had seeded the clouds, and she's protesting that chemistry be put into the clouds, and that's why had nothing to do with seeding the clouds. The glass cloud had been seeded several days before. You have to seed the cloud that falls. You can't put seeds in the cloud and 3 days later another system comes through. That was really amazing how that was going down.
I missed that one. I noticed the Venus and Uranus conjunction because it's all the little girls that left, and we're holding hands when they were found, right? A lot of couples too, husband and wife, sisters, friends. So, but that Venus and Uranus coming to it, and then she passed in and went into Gemini. So we were, again, hearing the stories. Yeah. I miss Marjorie. I don't really tune into her.
That's good for you. Good for you. But there's a lot of meteorologists protesting that it had nothing whatsoever to do with seeding. It has everything to do with climate change and the new power of storms, and no one wants to admit that.
Right.
So there's no point in looking at blame, but that area had been asking for a warning system for many years, and the state, which has a budget surplus, kept refusing, said they would pay 5% of the plan to put in a warning system on that area.
Right.
So it wasn't, the people, their understaffed agency had the weather agency had still predicted it, even with short staffed. But some of the staff that they took out as unnecessary were the liaison with the local communities, the scientists that could translate this to the staff and make sure that the evacuation plans were engaged. So I think that's what we're seeing there. Anyway, we feel for them.
Well, there also was a story that one of the towns had put in an alarm system in, because you're not going to check your email in the middle of the night.
Right.
And the little kids don't keep their phones in the camp. Right. So that town put in an alarm system, and the town that got hit so hard, that money didn't go in for the alarms. It went in for other things. So that was because that first town that sounded the alarm, they all got out. So that's also the duality of the Gemini. We're going to see that a lot.
Lots of
And
different stories here.
yeah, well, version 1, version 2. Like
Right.
if we had, oh, this is what happened. And people are going, don't judge it. I'm like, no, no. Mercury and Gemini wants us to see both sides of the mirror. He wants us to see, well, this is one reality, this is another reality. And what does that look like? Right. So, and then you, with your Mercury and Leo, listen and go, well, I kind of like that reality. That one just seems a little bonkers, So,
I'm
yeah.
having, I'm looking at Gemini with a little different eyes besides our president who's a Gemini. But I was looking back at Uranus in Gemini, which it went into Gemini right before the American Revolution. It went into Gemini right before World War II. And
Right,
it
right before the Civil War, too. Yeah.
right before the Civil War, and Pluto went into Gemini just as World War I began. And I looked back 1606. There was, it was the first invasion from England, really setting up the Jamestown, the like invasion into America. And then 1690, there was the New England Revolt against it was the King William's War and the Salem witch trials with Uranus in Gemini. So America worked with this Uranus and Gemini. There's just a lot of, I think, many stories, as you said, and conflict between the many stories.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, remember Castor and Pollux, right? It's a myth, but also Cain and Abel. What'd you do to your brother? What do you mean? What did I do to my brother? It's that understanding of how are we cross responsible for the people we know and love.
So we have a couple of Elise, who asked for us to look at your chart. Elise, I need your place of birth. I need time, date, and place. We're missing place. So we're going to look at Lou's chart, and Lou asked, did all the close people have passed, left with one connection and no direction? Would like some insight as how to best elevate and levitate out of fear and self-imposed limitations and what to offer the world. And so we have the tri-wheel, but let's take a first look. Everybody who asked to have their charts looked at tonight have their sun at 0 to 2 degrees of a cardinal sign. So everybody is experiencing that Saturn, Neptune aspecting their sun, and that kind of the difficulty, feeling old, dissolving old identities, but wanting to be inspired by something new. What do you see here, Anne? I can put up the tri-wheel in a minute, but
No, no. What I notice is the Pisces rising, right? So he's just had
Mhm.
Saturn kind of burning through his whole first house. So that kind of takes away a lot of, kind of restructures his life, particularly last year when he had Saturn squaring his Saturn. So it's kind of a, a psychological change for him. And as the Jupiter in Libra would like partners, but the awareness that they've all died or left, with Jupiter in the 8th. In terms of his Venus, Moon, Chiron, he connects with people, but he's also a little bit cautious because of that Capricorn sun.
And a tendency to keep a little bit of a distance. Loves being in the group, but has trouble creating that intimate connection.
Yeah. So I think
Moon in Aquarius
with the eclipses going through 1st and 7th, this is going to bring in new people like it did in 2000 and 19 years ago, 2006, and in 1987, and in 1968. So you want to kind of get out and go, okay, let me get out in the world more, because he is a little reclusive with those planets. Not in a mean way, but it takes him a while to feel comfortable, takes him a while to share. So now he's got to kind of, get out of his comfort zone, really.
Right. And it really is a dissolving of who you used to be.
Yeah.
With that lineup squaring the sun. It's going to be on and off for the next little bit. And so we got that strongly placed. We also have the moon in Cancer, progressed moon in Cancer. So that's going to go into Leo in about 9 months. We think Lou will start to find a new way. It's been on a very personal journey for the last 5 years. I would say this is, even at that age, it's an important, younger than me, to experiment with what you want to do next, to try things. This is a trying time. With the moon in Cancer, you can be kind to yourself, don't push yourself. But there's a lot of a need with that moon Uranus opposition natally to push yourself a bit, to experience, to check out new groups and check out new experiences. What do you add to that? Mark, do you have anything you want to throw in there?
I'm still looking at the chart.
I think
I'll check with you in a minute.
Okay, I think that that someone who has Saturn and Sun up at the top of the chart in the 10th, it's really hard to let go of the identity that work created in you.
Yeah.
And but this is sort of like, what else are you? It's a real range of motion exercise.
Well, I would be curious if he sings or he does any kind of creative thing, and maybe he could find a choir or a chorus to join, because then it's a structured activity, and he goes and sings, or he finds a group he can join that he does work in that makes him happy, because that makes the Capricorn happy, and then he has something to do, but it also allows him to be in a group where he's able to connect with people. Hi, how are you? There's a shared experience, and that may be a good thing for him. Like I had a friend with actually a fairly similar chart to this, and he had recovered from a ending of a relationship and wanted to date again, and joined the Gay Men's Chorus, which was 150 gay guys, and they all had friends. And in the course of that year and a half, which he met his partner that he's been with now for 36 years. So it's an opportunity. There's incoming is really what I'm saying to Lou. Incoming opportunities, and if it's a group that you've kind of thought, gee, that might be fun to join, I think I'm going to go try it. Or a church choir, or just a community service. Like you have a local thing. New York has lots of community service. You got looks like good skills with language. Maybe go to work with immigrants who are learning English. There's a lot of finding something that he finds meaningful that allows him to get in connection in community. So
it'll help to let it be fun.
Yes.
Having that progressed Venus in the 12th house, it's coming to square his natal Neptune. Yeah. And what you want to do is get something in place before that happens. Because Venus square Neptune can be disappointing, and so. But if you set up something strong to begin with, then you develop more of a spiritual side to things, or a more idealistic side. But and that's coming up like in a year or two. So you want to be ready for that by plugging into some good connections now, and really let it be the people that make you happy. That will be the first clue, because that's going to go somewhere.
Yeah, and it looks like he was born and had a Mercury retrograde for 40 years. So that's the other thing to remember, Lou. Your Mercury is natal Mercury's 12 Aquarius, and your progressed Mercury's 3. So 40 years of your life, you were doing work and service to other people, and now that chapter's finished because your Mercury is direct. And it's kind of, or your Venus rather, is direct, and it's like, oh, like what would I like to do? What would you'd never actually had the opportunity to ask yourself that question. You don't have any planets in the first house, and you have the node of fate in the second, which is you kind of get led to things. But now now you have the sun in the first, so it's like, well, what would you like to do? And maybe that's a question you've never asked yourself before, because you were always in reaction or in response to your work or what other people needed, and would take care of them and go that way. And now you're kind of like, wow, what do I do? And I look at this chart, I kind of think seeing eye dog retired, right? So seeing eye dogs work really hard, but it's a stressful job being a seeing eye dog. and then they retire and go live with a regular family, and they don't bark and they don't chase cars, and then they kind of look around and they go, well, I don't have to work anymore. And they're kind of like, you're a retired seeing eye dog. So you have to kind of figure out, as a retired seeing eye dog, well, what would you like to do? Maybe chase a car. Try fetch. Yeah, fetch is boring, Anne. But you know what I would like?
I agree.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna, and this is another one. Elise sent me the birthplace that said they want to know what's coming up. Also have Uranus at 29 degrees. What's the significance of that? And what will the Venus-Uranus conjunct bring? So we see, it's hard to see. I just wish we could make these a little bit bigger. That this is someone with a sun at 2 Libra, Mars at 1 Virgo, and that is, setting up the pattern, and Uranus natally at 20. So very Uranian chart with Uranus conjunct the sun, new moon with the moon in Libra moving forward, and Uranus at 29. So by progression, the Uranus is at 2 degrees, and we're in the last 10 months of a progressed lunar cycle in Scorpio. What do you see, Anne?
I'm noticing that little Venus sitting on the ascendant there. I kind of like that one. Because again, same issue with our previous person. No planets in houses 1 and 2. So the me, myself, and I is really dedicated to the other. And as you're born on an eclipse, you don't have a lot of control over your own life. The eclipses will come along and drive you. And because it's
That's south the sun node, and moon night next to the node.
Yeah, sun and moon, right? Yeah, but also sun with it on the south node. So it's like I'm coming in to balance things in this lifetime. So with Jupiter rising in the 7th, that's a new 6-year cycle where you're kind of out in the world more than you have been the last 6 years. But also we have that ascendant at 2 Aries on your Chiron. So you've been doing a lot of childhood work, healing old wounds from early childhood about how do I get out in the world and be brave. And then your sun just got off of Neptune. So your progressed sun just got off the Neptune. So the depression you've kind of been in, maybe some health matters too, the last couple years are finishing. So that's kind of a new big cycle. What was the question she added about her Uranus?
Something about a Uranus-Venus conjunction, which is, I'm not quite sure what I'm seeing on that. Uranus, does it mean that Uranus is at the last degree and Uranus just passed that last degree? So Uranus recently, with her Uranus and the last degree of Virgo, just got trined by it. And now it's moving forward. It's going to come back and touch that again this yeah. And I think that, for someone with that many planets in Libra you've been trained to be a people pleaser, to care about everybody else and how I can be the good doobie and the responsible one, Capricorn rising, that the Uranus trine Uranus isn't going to kick you out the door, but it is offering you an opportunity as Pluto starts trining, Uranus trines, both of them are going into your charts. This is the time for you to unfold and find out who you really are and experiment and, really kind of see what else is out there for you with that lineup of planets. You might be feeling it as sort of a restless discontent, not because anything is wrong, but because you've outgrown it or it's completing. And there's room for new life coming into your life over the next few years.
Yeah, one thing you want to watch out for, your progressed moon is conjuncting your progressed Mercury. So something's going on with your communicating. You may be saying things as though this is the last time I'm going to tell you this. There's a sort of finality to what you're saying, or maybe just an urge on your part to make these things final. But do that. That'll help you because you're set up to do it. But be careful because there are sort of side effects from being so strident about what you're trying to communicate, especially emotional communications.
And I think that last year of a progressed lunar, the 30-year progressed cycle, that there's so much for the past that's coming up to be reviewed. All that new energy will really take off after your progressed lunar new moon in 10 months. But right now, look at all the loose ends of the past. Savor what you've learned over the last 30 years. Remember it and know that there's you're moving into a new ocean. You're going to need new maps, but now is the time to remember everything you've learned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you might be running a little paranoid too, and that's okay. That's part of that Scorpio moon.
Yeah.
Because it's high and it's
Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean you're wrong. Is this
right? Exactly.
That's kind of my statement. Yeah, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean you're wrong. And I just want to point out, my Google alerts said the rain was going to start around 8, and we just had a little thunderstorm right up there, a little lightning bolt.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
And it's
ours. My alarm says, "Oh, there's a fire about 100 miles, not 50 miles from me, not far." But there is a fire. I've got the little alarm. It's it goes straight from too much rain to fire season out here in the West.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so much fun. So I'm going to put up Connie. I think we have not done Connie, and Connie has patiently mentioned herself in a couple of situations just to have a general read to see what stands out. And again, we have that 1 degree Libra sun and Saturn at 4 degrees Aquarius. So much happening on those degrees.
yeah.
And this is someone who, again, strong planets in Leo, Mars at 2 Virgo, Neptune at 4, Saturn at 4. So this year is more like getting ready, and it will be more next year that there may be a need for some change. At least that's what I'm seeing. Right now, it's kind of like, who am I and how am I in my neighborhood and what am I feeling comfortable about? I'm just going to put up the tri-wheel to see and it's 3 months before the progressed lunar new moon. So 2 charts now, everybody's had, their sun at 0 to 1 degrees, and they're in a progressed lunar dark of the moon. This is in 3 months, she begins a new lunar cycle in Sagittarius.
Yeah. A lot more fun, Connie, a lot more fun. About 4 years ago, you left being a Scorpio, and now you're going to really embrace that Sag energy, because your progressed moon's, which as a Cancer rising, coming to integrate with your ego and what your purpose is. So that's a nice one. That's a nice, and it's in the 5th house of pleasures and joy and happiness and what I want to do that's fun and creative. And it goes back to your natal Leo moon, which really does like love. It wants love. Love is important. So where do you find the joy in your life? It's big stuff. But a lot of people that may be leaving, because with Pluto on the South Node, or you may be leaving them, saying, I've kind of done my work here. I need to go off. I always think of the progressed moon in Sag as being like Mary Poppins, and they go, well, when are you going to leave? She goes, when the wind changes. And they're like, well, when's that? She goes, I don't know, but when the wind changes. So your chart's getting ready to go, I can feel the wind coming in. In this case, I feel the storm coming in. I can smell it. I love the smell of rain. But yeah, so you're this new energy coming in. Mark, what do you see?
Yeah, the Saturn with the South Node, carries a lot of weight and tends to bring a lot of old lessons around. You kind of have a feeling a lot of, haven't I learned this before? Why am I going through this again? And it's just to let it go, and no more purpose to it than that. But a lot of times when you feel that things are too familiar, it's almost like you dream something and the next day it comes to pass. And you'll have that. But the sooner you can just build it into your current structure, the better. And realize it's sometimes we just do things to be sure that we're done. So you have a lot of that going on.
So this, she hit this last progressed lunar new moon in 1996, in the spring of 1996. So the cycle that she's completing in a few months started in 1996. And kind of think about that cycle. And what do you, I mean, this is definitely, it's going to new moon in Sagittarius, much more playful, much more exploratory, much more kind of reaching out in the world. Like you've done some heavy karma slogging during the last 30 years. And this next piece asks you where you want to take it, which will be an interesting journey.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So back to, before we close, because we're at our time, and Mark can lead us on a last meditation. What suggestions do I have people as Saturn slows down this weekend and gets ready to turn retrograde? Any suggestions? Check the foundations of your house, for one thing.
Yeah.
I always like retrogrades. I had, we were on that new moon, we were on that cruise to Alaska. And one of the things we did on the new moon was we did a journey to Jupiter. But before we did it, we had a totem animal. We got a totem animal. So, you went to some place on Earth and you met your totem animal, and then you went on the journey to Jupiter. So one of my friends got a groundhog. And so I got a message from her about 5 minutes before getting on the show, because she has a place in Vermont and then where her kids live. And then she has an apartment in Connecticut, because that's where she has lived, as an adult. So she got up there and she has a groundhog who has taken residence under her front porch. Her name is Peggy and she's pregnant. So, yeah, so it was kind of cool. And she's like, I have a groundhog that's living with me. When you said check the foundations, like, yeah, okay. So Saturn in that Aries, remember, he's just giving us a movie trailer. And we're going to see people, when Neptune's stationed and Saturn's stationed, as he goes retrograde, we're going to review a lot of the decisions we've made, because Saturn and Neptune got to this far in Aries, and then they're going to go backwards until January. So this is an excellent time for you to say, I kind of thought I was going this way, but now I feel like I'm going backwards for a bit. Okay. And I always encourage retrogrades, all RE, redo, revise, revisit, any RE word. That's what you're supposed to do on a retrograde. If you have Saturn retrograde in your chart natally, this is when you're really busy, because when it's retrograde in the sky, it activates your natal chart to be like, oh my God, I feel like all the blocks are gone. I got to go. So I always love watching him shift, because he says to you, okay, so you said you wanted to do this. Is that really on your agenda? And then we have to go, I'm in, or nah, thumbs up or thumbs down. So,
okay. On this last bit, we will take this off. And Mark, can you lead us on a meditation?
Yeah, take a moment, sit quietly, close your eyes, and imagine that groundhog that set up shop under the front steps. Think, where in my chart would a groundhog choose to dig in? What part of my chart? Which planets? Which houses? Think for a moment what that is. And now you can open your eyes and talk to that groundhog whenever you can.
Beautiful. Talk to that groundhog.
Talk to the groundhog.
And it helps you ground when you need grounding. Go to the groundhog.
That's why it's a groundhog.
Yeah, that's why it's a groundhog.
So, and it's a pregnant groundhog. So whatever you're talking to, you're going to get some babies,
New beginnings. Okay, take care, and we'll see you next week. Go carefully.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.